there's favoritism, and then there's whatever federal robe cosplay Judge Judge Liman is doing on the docket this week. Because let me tell you, if you thought things couldn't get any more one-sided in this circus of a lawsuit, buckle up. On Friday, buried like a bad tweet under a press release, Judge Liman handed Blake Lively's legal team a custom-embroidered gift. First crack at deposing Sony executive Mr. Greenstein, bright and early, at 8 o'clock in the morning, on a schedule that Blake's side dictated down to the minute. And what did he tell the defense team? Essentially, figure it out. Let me walk you through this, because if you've ever wondered what legal privilege looks like when it's dressed in soft lighting and Hollywood hair, this is it. Here's the background. The deposition of Mr. Greenstein is a big deal. He's not just some background player. He's a key Sony figure tied to both the production and the distribution mess that's now tangled up in Blake's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and the Wayfarer crew. The defendants, the ones being sued, are the ones who scheduled this deposition. They noticed it, they arranged it, they planned to go first, like every basic rule of procedure would suggest. But Blake's legal team had other ideas. They stormed the court with a latte in one hand and a demand letter in the other, saying, "Actually, we want to go first. We know it's your witness, your deposition, and your dime, but we'd like to hijack the schedule and do things our way. Oh, and we're starting at 8 in the morning. Not 9, whether you're there or not." Yes, you heard that correctly. They told the court they'd begin questioning with or without defense counsel present. Who does that? Seriously. Who gets to rewrite the rules of civil procedure just because their client has a shampoo line? But here's the kicker. Judge Liman agreed, without a hearing, without a briefing, without even pretending to balance the scales. He issued a text-only order granting Blake's team exactly what they asked for. Mr. Greenstein will sit for deposition on Tuesday, September 30th, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4:30 in the afternoon, Pacific time. Blake Lively's lawyers will get 3.5 hours of uninterrupted, on-the-record testimony, plus up to 30 minutes of breaks. Then, and only then, will the defense get 3.5 hours to ask their questions. There will be one 30-minute lunch break and nothing else. And the personal matter raised by defendants, which made the early start time unworkable for them, was dismissed with a single sentence: must give way to the convenience of the non-party witness. Translation: cry about it. Now, I know what some people are going to say. It's just scheduling. It's not a big deal. Okay, let's stop right there. Because this isn't just scheduling. This is the difference between walking into a room as the lead and walking in as the rebuttal. When you go first in a deposition, you shape the story. You decide what gets asked, what gets emphasized, what the witness is focused on, and by the time the defense gets their shot, the witness is tired. The clock is ticking. The damage is done. Blake's team doesn't just get a head start, they get the narrative advantage. They get to say, this is the story, and dare the other side to clean up the mess with a handful of minutes left. That's why this order matters, and it matters even more when you realize this is not the first time Judge Liman has given Blake's team exactly what they want. Remember the sealed filings, the motion to block public access to documents that were already being discussed across social media? Remember the back-to-back extensions? The procedural gifts disguised as calendar notes? This isn't an isolated incident. This is a pattern, and people are noticing. Let's get one thing clear. I'm not saying Judge Liman is corrupt. I'm not saying he's doing this on purpose to help Blake win. What I am saying is this. The optics are trash. Because when you consistently rule in favor of the better resourced party, the celebrity, the plaintiff with the PR team, the one whose husband owns half of Wrexham, it starts to look like justice isn't blind. It looks like justice is checking IMDb. Imagine you're Justin Baldoni's legal team. You put together your schedule. You follow the rules. You do the legwork to notice a deposition. Then, suddenly, you get an email that says, actually, we're going first. Be there at 8 or don't. We're starting either way. You object. You file motions. You raise the very valid point that this isn't their witness, this isn't their deposition, and this isn't how this works. And the judge shrugs. Let me put it another way. If you walked into a restaurant, ordered a steak, and right as the waiter brought it out, the person at the next table said, actually, I'll be eating that first, you can have what's left, and the waiter said, of course, Miss Lively. What would you call that? Exactly. And don't even get me started on the timing. This order didn't come on a Monday. It didn't follow oral argument. It wasn't part of a thoughtful balancing act. It came on a Friday, late, with no explanation, in a docket already jammed with procedural skirmishes. It came when fewer people were watching. It came fast. And it came clean. Like someone knew the less attention it got, the better. Let's also talk about what this says to other litigants. Because if I'm sitting at home watching this unfold, if I'm a regular person who's ever been in court, ever had to fight for fairness, ever seen how slow and cold the process can be, and I see this judge handing Blake's team a procedural win that bends common practice backwards, I lose faith. It tells me that if I ever find myself on the wrong side of a lawsuit filed by someone with a team of stylists and an agent on speed dial, the system might not protect me. Not because the law doesn't care, but because optics and access matter more. Blake Lively's team did what any aggressive plaintiff's lawyers would do. They asked for an advantage. They asked for control. That's their job. But Judge Liman's job is different. His job is to say, that's not how this works. His job is to say, you don't get to dictate terms on a deposition you didn't schedule. His job is to balance fairness, not feelings. Instead, he handed over the keys. And for what? So Blake's lawyers can roll into a deposition early, burn time with softballs, and leave the other side scrambling? But here's what makes it worse. And I mean stomach-turning worse. One of the key reasons Blake's team asked for this exact schedule is because Mr. Greenstein, this Sony executive, allegedly can't stay past 4:30 in the afternoon. Because, he's important. He's busy. He has corporate things to do. And Judge Liman? He didn't just say okay, he bent the entire day around it. He carved out this perfect little 8 to 4:30 window like it was a spa reservation. He gave Blake's team first shot, blocked off the schedule with a 30-minute lunch, and told the defense, you can finish whatever's left after she's done. Why? Because the convenience of the non-party witness must take priority. That's what he wrote. Let that sit for a second. Because if you've been following this case even a little bit, you already know the irony is off the charts. This same judge who suddenly cares so deeply about the schedule and stress levels of a Sony executive, this same judge who's now moving heaven and earth to protect a non-party witness from the horror of going past 4:30, he didn't lift a finger for the other non-party witnesses, the normal ones. The regular people Blake Lively dragged into this lawsuit with subpoenas so aggressive they read like warning shots. Those folks, too bad. Those people didn't get convenience. They got legal threats. They got forced to appear at weird times, with little notice, in uncomfortable settings, with no regard for their personal lives or work schedules or childcare or any of it. They weren't treated like humans. They were treated like obstacles. And Judge Liman, crickets. Not a peep, no concern, no carve-outs, no 30-minute lunch breaks, no thoughtful, let's accommodate the witness language. They weren't elite enough. They weren't worth rearranging the schedule for. But the second Blake wants access to a man with Sony in his email signature, now it's all about balance and respect and judicial flexibility. That's not just a bad look. That's a double standard wearing a black robe. This isn't about legal nuance. This is about selective compassion. Because if you're going to call someone a non-party witness, treat them like one consistently. Don't wait until the person is rich, powerful, or legally connected to suddenly remember that their time matters. Blake Lively subpoenaed people with no public platforms, no legal teams, no million-dollar reputations to protect, just ordinary folks. And Judge Liman never once stopped to say, are we overreaching here? Or is this fair? Or do they deserve consideration? But now, suddenly, Greenstein's calendar is sacred? He gets the court's deference? His departure time sets the tone of the entire order? Let's just call it what it is. Justice for the connected, silence for the rest. And here's what really bugs me. The court didn't have to say that. The judge could have granted the request without putting that line in writing. He could have just issued a neutral order. But instead, he went out of his way to include the phrase, the personal matter mentioned by defendants must give way to the convenience of the non-party witness. In other words, I know you have something going on. I don't care. He matters more. That's not judicial discretion. That's judicial tone deafness. When you're sitting on a bench in a case this high profile, with every motion being dissected by the public and every witness being Googled, the last thing you should be doing is signaling that there's a VIP list for fairness. But that's what this looks like. And Blake's team knows it. That's why they asked. That's why they demanded. That's why they threatened to proceed at 8 o'clock in the morning with or without the other side's lawyers present. because they knew, whether by pattern or confidence or just bold-faced arrogance, that Judge Liman would probably say yes. And he did. That's the problem with precedent. When a judge shows leniency over and over for one side, they stop asking. They start expecting. And the courtroom stops being a courtroom. It starts being a customer service desk. Now, here's where it all folds back into Blake's overall strategy. Because her team knows they're bleeding momentum. The sealed filings, the media blowback, the online backlash, it's not a great look. So they're grabbing every tactical edge they can. Depose Greenstein first? That's a headline. Frame the narrative? That's a PR win. And Judge Liman just gift-wrapped it for them. What was once supposed to be a neutral fact-finding session just became stage one of a script, one that Blake's team gets to rehearse first. And I don't care how procedural this is. When the judge becomes a supporting actor in your media strategy, something's broken. And before anyone says, well, the judge gave both sides equal time, let me stop you right there. Equal hours does not mean equal opportunity. If you go second, you're not playing offense. You're playing cleanup. You're trying to course correct after the witness has already been steered through Blake's legal narrative. That is a disadvantage. Every lawyer knows it. Every judge knows it, and you can bet Blake's team knows it too. That's why they pushed so hard. And that's why this ruling is so infuriating. Blake's team gets the deposition schedule they wanted. They get to go first. They get to show up early. They get their 3.5 hours. And they get it all justified by the convenience of a non-party witness, a courtesy that no other non-party in this case has ever received. Meanwhile, the defense team is told to deal with it. Their personal matter doesn't matter. Their concerns about fairness, noted and ignored. Their role as the party who actually noticed the deposition in the first place, completely erased. And the judge? He doesn't just allow it. He greenlights it with a shrug and a calendar invite. So no, I don't think this is about procedure. I think it's about power. And I think this judge just reminded everyone exactly who he thinks deserves it.